Hey, I'm Reno, and this is my friend Dylan.
I'm Dylan.
And today we'll be talking about fighting games and how to get into the competitive scene with them. Uh, Dylan, what do you think are some fighting games?
Some I've heard would be Super Smash Bros, uh, Tekken, Street Fighter.
Some games that have lasted the longest in the competitive scene are usually games that have multiple series, such as Super Smash Bros., Street Fighter, Tekken, and Soul Calibur. Most, if not all, of the Street Fighter games have been in the competitive scenes, and usually have weekly tournaments or tournaments that you can find online. Super Smash Bros. Every single one of them has definitely been in Evo, and each of them still have a long running tournaments that are still being actively played. Soul Calibur, that one isn't as popular nowadays, but whenever the new game does release, it will always be in Evo and be played. Usually they don't have a lot of longevity, so don't count that one. Tekken does have one of the strongest communities, however. It will always be played, and you can always count on it to be played. Right. And ways that you can get into tournaments is you can find a YouTube channel that plays the game that you want to get into, and usually they have a Discord, and they'll do monthly tournaments. And if you want to compete in contests in your local areas, usually you should go out a little bit farther than you expect because usually they're not hosted in every city. So be sure to search around for those. Uh, Also, joining a Discord from a Twitch, it will also be very beneficial as they definitely have tournaments that go very regularly. And now we will be talking about how to practice to get into these tournaments. You should learn a bit about data. You should learn about blocking and block strings, and some combos and what attacks do in games. The gameplay that we have in the background right now is Injustice 2. It's not in competitive scenes as much as it used to be right now. So what you want to look for in a combo generally is to make it pretty long and add as much damage as you can. If you can add above 30% of the health bar with the combo that you know you can perform consecutively, because there are combos that do a lot more damage, but generally if you try and do them online or don't have a stable connection, they will just drop and it won't be worth it to go for such a risky option. So you want to look for a short combo that's easy to perform but does a lot of damage. If you know you can perform a hard combo though, you should go for the risk because usually it's a big payoff. And when doing a combo, you also want to see how it ends. Because if you have the enemy that's laying on the floor, there's a thing called a wake up action. And what wake up actions are, it's an invincible move that makes it so that they can stand up safely or make sure that you block what they're going to do so they can get up without any punishment. But if you can make the opponent stand up at the end with a move, because some moves make opponents stand even though you hit them, then you can go for another reset and then basically keep looping that until they figure it out or they can defend against it. Now we will be talking about frame data. Frame data can usually be found in video games if you go into practice mode and click pause. There will be a move list or a list of all the character's attacks in separate categories, such as basic attacks. Combo attacks are when you click buttons in a certain order that will make your character do attacks that usually have special properties, such as it would be like a mid attack, and then a low attack, or maybe an overhead to try and mix up the opponent. And then it'll be special moves, which are just moves that are unique to the character and will mainly be the main thing that makes you want to play them. Today we'll be looking at Injustice's stats. What startup is just how fast the move comes out. So if someone does a move that takes 20 frames to start up and yours only takes like 11 or maybe 14, your move will attack them first, so they will just be in hit stun the whole time. Usually the quicker the move, that means they're not as active as long, and what active is, it's like how long the hitbox is there. So if you put your hand out for like 2 seconds, that's what kind of it is. Recovering is, it's when you do the action, but how long it takes you to pull away from doing that action. So to make sure that you're not vulnerable while doing it. The most important part is block advantage and hit advantage. Block advantage, if it's plus, that means when you attack them when they are blocking, that means you'll be able to go first before them. and they cannot punish you at all. So those are the things you generally want to do when someone's blocking, and also to make sure you do a bit of chip damage. Chip damage is when you attack them when they're blocking and prevent them from taking no damage, because some moves do more chip damage than others. It's just based on what you find. Hit advantage is when you hit the opponent, and this is generally what you want to use for restanding. So when you hit them, that's generally the longest thing. They will not be able to do anything for quite a bit, and they will just be stunned in animation. And then you can see if any moves that start up quick enough to go into the next attack. But not all attacks can do this, because if you look at canceling is how long it takes for your character to be able to do the next move that's not in the combo. So if you wanted to do jab, jab, and toss a boomerang with Batman or something, generally you couldn't do that because of how long the canceling is. But usually if you do the last hit, it will be able to tell you if you would be able to do that in time. We'll be talking about properties of attacks now. And properties of attacks is one of the easier things to learn instead of frame data. You should still learn frame data, but this can help you out sometimes. Generally, when you attack with an overhead is one of the slower moves that will happen, and the main option you want to go for if the opponent is ducking. High attacks that you use for anti-airs, and just to make sure that, and they will be primarily what properties projectiles will be. So if you see a projectile, usually you should be able to duck it. And now for mids, some projectiles are mids, but it's not as common, and it's generally, they're not the strong projectiles that will knock you over. And for mids, that's like what 80% of your attacks will be, just mid attacks, so that you almost always hit the opponent, because mids can even hit opponents when they're ducking. Alright, so now for low attacks. Low attacks are attacks that will be used to attack the opponent's feet if they're just standing and you want to poke them for a little bit of damage. They're usually quick and fast to perform. Also, these generally knock over your opponent most of the time if they're a strong one. So they can use a reversal right after that. If people are blocking, generally you want to use mids. It's so that you can use a block string. Block string is when you keep attacking an opponent while they're blocking, and they won't be able to do any actions except for standing and ducking. And since mids hit them when they're standing or ducking, that's the one you should use for block strings, because they would always hit them. So now if they're ducking, you want to go for an overhead, because that will break their block, and then you can go for a combo. But if they're expecting this, they will stand up and you would be able to get punished. So you should do this when you are certain that you can do it, because overheads are generally one of the slower moves. Most people duck when they block, because it is so much easier to block a overhead than a low. Some people like to stand so that they can react to your ducks instead. And if they have this habit, you generally want to go for more lows, just to scram a bit, even if it's not one that's going to start up a combo, because not all lows will start a combo. So for your characters, we'll be starting off with all-rounders. All-rounders usually make up most of the cast, and are pretty diverse in basically everything that the other characters do, except for grapplers. All-rounders each have a projectile usually, just to counter some zoners, and all-rounders also have a way to get in, but not as good as a rushdown character. Usually it's just a normal slide, or maybe like a little dash attack that would be able to help them get in. Usually they can fight from afar or right next to you. Usually they don't excel at anything, but the fact that they have a bit of everything makes them pretty good choices to have. Rushdown characters are a group of characters that are mainly speedy and can get in quick. Rushdown characters are pretty common in the roster. Rushdown characters usually have an easy way to get in, such as teleporting behind you or just teleporting close to you, or they will have a dash or attack that will make them get in from either across the screen or from halfway across the screen. Usually, the rushdown characters have the most amount of damage in the game, and usually have one of the harder combos to pull off just because of how speedy they are. Rushdown characters are definitely I'd recommend if you like to get in and do a lot of damage. Now for zoners. Zoners are primarily people who would try and keep away, toss projectiles at you from across the map. That's not all they do. Zoners actually have a way to keep themselves away, whether that's teleporting away a bit, or have a move that pushes you back quite a bit. They can also perform some combos, but usually just enable 1, 2, 3 hit combo, and then they launch one of the projectiles. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but it can add up fairly quickly. Usually, if they're Pia Zoner, they can either hit low or high or medium with any of their attacks. Grapplers are one of the more scarier things that you look out for in the game, but they also make up the least amount of characters in most fighting games. Grapplers don't have a way to get in like a rushdown character, and they don't have any projectiles like zoners or all-rounders. It's very rare for them to have either of these, because if that happens, they'd be the best character in the game. Grapplers can bypass all the blocking skills that you have came up with over the time of you practicing, and will prevent you from getting away from them, either by just constantly harassing you with grabs or using anti-air grabs that get you out of the air if you try and jump away. The grabs do the most amount of the damage, so they don't really need combos. If they land 2 of the grabs, that's essentially the same as a full combo with most characters. And if they land a short combo with the grab, usually leads to some of the most damage in the game. And while this does sound very strong and overpowered, since they can't get in and don't usually have a way to keep away tool, if they get camped out by a zoner, it can be really frustrating to try and get in. That's why it's so hard to make a grappling character that is not broken. So Dylan, now that you played the game for a bit, what would you say are the main takeaways after playing?
Um, my main takeaways would definitely be learning combos. That was really fun. Um, the frame data that didn't really make much sense to me. That's really technical, but I think if I really focused on it, it would make more sense to me.
Yeah.
And then kind of understanding what characters, because some characters are heavier than others in a
Yeah.
sense. They fall faster, that kind of stuff.
It's definitely important to learn some frame data, and it's not something you can learn overnight because you need to play against multiple characters to learn what they do, and then you have to memorize it. So it's not something you can learn in one day, even in a week. It might take you a month, and even then, there's some characters who I never played, so you might not see them. So some recommendations to learn these mechanics more is to go into training mode and look at the frame data that's usually on the side, or just by playing the character and then seeing if everything is uh, viable to use with the kit. And once you get done with practicing in training mode and you feel comfortable, go online and start playing, and then see how you feel then.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and now with everything summarized, I'd encourage everyone to go and watch other channels for tutorials because those are the best ways to learn. See you later.
And don't forget to check out the Creative Communications YouTube channel. And don't forget to check out the Industrial Evolution video series. Thank you.